I want to know, does your husband also make recipes?
Yeah, my husband's a pretty good cook. That's neutral in flavor, that you can see through, that's very light in color. Grape seeds, safflower, sunflower, peanut oil.
We all remember the vibrant Rachael Ray, but the woman in these recent videos is almost unrecognizable. From slurred speech scares to those heartbreaking, tragic diagnosis rumors, the kitchen has gone silent. But the biggest mystery? What her husband just revealed. What is really going on with Rachael? We've always seen Rachael as the woman who could handle anything, but no one was prepared for the bombshell news that put her husband in an impossible spot. What precisely occurred? The headline that set the internet ablaze. The internet is a strange place where a person can be alive and well 1 minute, and a tragic headline can come up the next minute. In late 2024, a wave of digital rumors started to move through social media feeds like wildfire. It began with blurry YouTube thumbnails showing photos of Rachael's husband, John. These videos had titles designed to stop a heart. They claimed John was finally saying goodbye, or that a tragic diagnosis had changed their lives forever. While it looked like breaking news, it was actually a carefully crafted trap for the curious and the concerned. These clips gained massive traction throughout 2025, racking up millions of views by exploiting the deep love people have for the cook. Immediately, the reactions from fans worldwide were heavy, and within days, thousands of comments flooded every post associated with the couple. People were typing and offering prayers for a woman who was still very much alive. The media world went into a frenzy. Fans weren't looking for recipes anymore. Instead, they were spending hours searching for any medical update that could explain the scary headlines. For decades, Rachael Ray has been the ultimate everywoman. She didn't just come from a fancy culinary school, she was the girl from upstate New York who taught millions how to make a meal in 30 minutes. Because she is so relatable and energetic, any hint of her suffering feels like a personal blow to her audience. When she looks vulnerable, it hits harder than it would with a distant Hollywood star. Her brand is built on being the neighbor you can count on. This is exactly why these rumors felt so devastating to so many people. What made matters worse was the silence from Rachael's team. In the beginning, there were no press releases or all is well posts. This silence acted like fuel for the fire. People assumed that if the news wasn't being denied, it must be true. The rumors were allowed to grow in the shadows, and this turned a few fake videos into a global narrative of impending tragedy. Without a clear voice to set the record straight, the internet filled in the blanks with the worst-case scenarios imaginable. Now, in 2026, the dust has finally started to settle. This investigation isn't about chasing shadows. It is about looking at the breadcrumbs from that very first viral video to see how a simple misunderstanding turned into a massive digital crisis. To understand why the world was so ready to believe the worst, the story has to go back to the moment the concern first turned into a full-blown panic. The September incident, a video under the microscope. The spark that turned curiosity into concern happened in September 2024. Rachael posted a video on Instagram that was intended to be a warm tribute to the late singer Tony Bennett.
The first time he came to my house, Tony Bennett ate 2 portions of ossobuco, and I almost killed him. I had polished the floors in the kitchen because, well...
In the video, she was cooking ossobuco, a classic Italian dish, and sharing a story about her friend. Usually, people are focused on the ingredients or her famous kitchen tips. However, this time the food was the last thing on anyone's mind. Viewers immediately noticed that something felt different about the way Rachael was talking. Her voice seemed heavy, and her words were running together. If you look closely at that footage, you can see why longtime fans were startled. For 20 years, Rachael has been a ball of fire on screen, talking a mile a minute with high energy. In this clip, her cadence was noticeably slower. Her mouth seemed to move with more effort, and her facial expressions did not have that familiar tightness. To many, she looked almost unrecognizable compared to the polished version they saw on their TV sets for nearly 2 decades. It was not about anything mere, it was about a total shift in her usual vibration. As the video began to trend, the internet split into 2 camps. One group believed the video had been edited, They suggested that the footage was slowed down by a glitch or an uploader trying to make her look bad. This slow-motion theory was a way for fans to protect their image of her. On the other side were people who felt a deep sense of dread. They feared they were watching a medical event happen in real time. They worried that the slurring was a sign of a stroke or a neurological issue that had not been made public yet. You see, context matters when looking at a person's private life. This video was not filmed in a bright New York City studio with professional sound and lighting. Rachael was at her home in Italy, a place where she goes to unplug. In the kitchen of her villa, she was not wearing the heavy makeup or the wardrobe required for a daytime talk show. She was a woman cooking for a friend in a relaxed setting. This environment contributed to a vibe that was far more laid back than her usual TV persona. The audience was seeing the real Rachael without the Hollywood mask. The comment section soon became a battleground of armchair doctors. Supporters were telling critics to leave her alone and let her age in peace. Critics, meanwhile, were dissecting her every move with a level of scrutiny that felt toxic. People were throwing out serious medical labels without knowing anything about her actual life. This type of digital diagnosing creates a massive amount of stress for the person at the center of the storm. It turns a human being into a puzzle for strangers to solve. From another angle, there is also the reality of aging in front of a camera. High-definition lenses are incredibly harsh because they capture every line and every change in a way that standard TV never did. As we all know, Rachael has spent decades under hot studio lights and on a grueling schedule. So, taking a break from the glam squad means she looks like a normal person in her 50s. While some saw a diagnosis, others saw a woman who was tired of the constant pressure to look perfect. Still, the questions did not stop. As the clip racked up millions of views, the theories took a darker turn, moving from fatigue to rumors of a life-altering medical crisis. The medical speculations explored. The craziest part is that these rumors never ended. There were still speculations that spiraled into a game of rumors about her health. One of the biggest theories involved the idea that Rachael suffered a mini-stroke, or a TIA. People online started zooming in on her face and pointing to what they called a sinking mouth. They argued that her facial muscles seemed to be losing their strength on one side. This led to a flood of comments from people sharing their own experiences with strokes. It became a terrifying narrative that was being built entirely out of guesses from strangers who were watching a short video on their phones. As the rumor mill kept grinding, other names for illnesses began to pop up in every thread. Some fans suggested Bell's palsy, while others wondered if she was battling multiple sclerosis. These are heavy conditions that change a person's life forever. And the internet, as usual, always has a way of taking one symptom and turning it into a worst-case scenario. Because there was no official word from her team yet, these guesses were treated as facts by many viewers. It was a chaotic moment where everyone wanted to be the first to solve the mystery. Of course, the tabloids took an even darker route. They leaned into the old cliché of accusing celebrity chefs of having one too many drinks while filming. These rumors suggested that Rachael was drunk rather than ill. However, there was zero evidence to support this claim. It is a common tactic used to discredit successful people in the food industry. For those who know Rachael's work ethic, this felt like a cheap shot at her character. It ignored the much more likely explanation of physical exhaustion or the natural effects of a long day in a hot kitchen. But then, one of the very real factors to consider is her history with vocal cord issues. Back in 2008, Rachael had to go under the knife to remove a benign cyst from her throat. Her voice has always been famous for that signature rasp. However, that sound comes from years of pushing her vocal cords to the limit. When someone has a history of vocal surgery, fatigue can make their speech sound much more labored than usual. It is not always a sign of a brain issue. Sometimes it is a sign that the instrument a person uses for work is worn out from decades of use and constant talking. Medical professionals often point out that slurred speech on its own does not provide a full picture. A real diagnosis requires looking at a cluster of symptoms over a long period. Stress is also a massive player here. Rachael spent 20 years producing a daily television show while traveling and managing multiple businesses. That level of constant pressure can do strange things to the nervous system and the way a person carries themselves. After 2 decades of being the hardest working person in the room, her body must have been sending a loud signal that it was time to slow down. So, while the world played doctor, Rachael finally decided to break her silence. However, her explanation only raised more questions than solving the health mystery itself. The truth behind the slur, Rachael's own words. In October 2024, the culinary icon launched a brand new project that felt like the perfect place to set the record straight. Her podcast, titled "I'll Sleep When I'm Dead."
Hi everyone, I'm Rachael Ray, and this is I'll Sleep When I'm Dead. I'm excited for everyone to join me for conversations with people I know and people I want to know better. Welcome to I'll Sleep When I'm Dead.
Arrived right as the viral storm reached its peak. Listeners tuned in expecting a clinical breakdown of her health, yet what they received was a very different kind of raw honesty. Rachael Ray did not lead with a medical report. Instead, she spoke about her relentless work ethic and the physical toll of her daily life. The biggest revelation came when she admitted to suffering a couple of bad falls in the weeks leading up to the podcast. She described herself as a homemaker who genuinely loves the grind of physical chores. Rachael told her audience about her habit of carrying heavy wood for the fireplace at her home. She even joked about having a fun competition with her husband to see who could carry more. These tumbles were serious enough to leave her out of commission for a while, preventing her from doing the manual labor she enjoys so much. For a woman who built an empire on high energy, being forced to slow down was a significant blow to her spirit. But then, this admission started a new wave of conversation. People began to connect the dots between those physical accidents and her appearance in the viral videos. Chronic pain can change the way a person carries their weight, and even how they form words. If she were taking medication for those injuries, it could easily explain a slight heaviness in her speech or a change in her facial expressions. Also, living with injuries in your 50s is a reality that many fans could relate to, especially for someone who refuses to take a day off. Rachael's identity is tied to being a worker, and she seemed to prefer the image of a bruised laborer over that of a fragile patient. However, not everyone was convinced by the story about the woodpile. Some fans felt the update was cryptic and served as an avoidance tactic. They pointed out that while falls explain a limp or a sore back, they do not always explain a persistent slur or a sinking mouth. This created a divide in the community. Half of the audience felt relief that she was simply dealing with the bumps and bruises of a busy life. The other half felt that she was hiding a much larger medical truth behind a relatable story of household chores. Regardless of the skepticism, Rachael stayed firm in her narrative. She chose to focus on her resilience rather than her limitations. She reminded everyone that she has spent decades powering through every obstacle, from house fires to vocal surgeries. To her, a few falls were only another hurdle to clear. Yet, even if her health was stabilizing, the headlines shifted their focus to the man by her side and why he was allegedly preparing to say goodbye. John Kusimano, the anchor and the rock. For more than 2 decades, John Kusimano has been much more than a husband to the famous chef. He is a high-powered entertainment lawyer and the lead singer of the rock band called The Cringe. Beyond his personal career, John is the co-architect of the entire Rachael Ray brand. He manages the legal complexities of her empire, while also sharing the screen as her favorite mixologist. The story of their relationship began at a mutual friend's party in 2001. They talked every single night from the moment they met until their beautiful wedding in Montalcino, Tuscany in 2005. Unlike many celebrity couples who live separate lives, Rachael and John created a world where they are rarely apart. This bond became even tighter during the pandemic when they moved their entire production into their personal home. For years, they have lived and worked together nearly 24 hours a day, alternating between their home in upstate New York and their villa in Italy. John has always acted as a shield for Rachael during her most difficult moments. When she underwent vocal cord surgery in 2008, he was the one helping her navigate the recovery. So this history of protection made the recent "saying goodbye" headlines even more shocking to fans. However, a closer look reveals that these dramatic phrases were mostly digital clickbait. These videos often used the phrase to refer to the couple saying goodbye to their old talk show format or their previous lifestyle in America as they spent more time in Italy. Their public appearances in late 2025 and early 2026 have consistently proven that the marriage is still standing strong. In February 2026, the couple appeared at the South Beach Wine and Food Festival in Miami. Rachael hosted the 20th anniversary of the famous Burger Bash, and John was right there with her, looking as supportive as ever.
Rachael Ray is literally popping up everywhere these days. So we sent Leslie to Miami all to track down our favorite celebrity chef, and they were also looking for the perfect burger.
They also made a rare red carpet appearance at a charity event for animal rescue, showing a united front that contradicted the rumors of a split. They seemed focused on their shared passions for food, music, and helping animals. To the outside world, John is the steady anchor and the rock that keeps the ship steady. He handles the business and provides the emotional support that allows Rachael to remain the face of the brand. Their long-term success in Hollywood is a rarity, and they often speak about how their independence actually brings them closer together. However, despite their public unity, Rachael's own descriptions of their marriage have occasionally painted a much more volatile picture. The weird marriage dynamics. In a 2024 episode of her podcast, Rachael dropped a truth bomb that made many people tilt their heads. She shared that she and her husband, John, engage in huge screaming matches. To many couples, this sounds like a disaster, but Rachael describes it as a healthy way of staying together. She believes that holding things in is far more dangerous than letting them out. These loud moments are not about hate. They are about two people with big personalities refusing to hide their feelings. After the yelling stops, they do not sit down for a long talk about their emotions. Instead, they use a method Rachael calls the separate corners philosophy. This means they each head to a different part of their home to find some quiet time and regain their focus. They do not force a resolution before they are ready, which allows their independence to stay intact. This independent streak is a massive part of why they chose a life without children. Rachael has been very open about her decision to not become a mother. She felt her career and her personality were not suited for raising kids, and she knew she could not give a child the attention they deserved. However, this choice did not come without a price. Over the years, Rachael was bashed by critics who called her cold or selfish for picking her work over a traditional family. Despite the noise from the outside world, she and John found their version of a family through their deep love for their dogs. They have always been dedicated parents to these animals, treating them with the kind of care that most people save for humans. Focusing all their energy on each other and their pets creates a high-pressure environment. But still, they have made it work for over 20 years. Also, when it comes to making it up to her husband after a fight, the celebrity chef does not follow the standard rules. She does not use the words, "I am sorry," in her relationship. Her apology language is much more physical and subtle. It might be a quick pat on the back or a kiss on top of the head as she walks by him in the kitchen. For John, these small gestures are enough to signal that the storm has passed. While this works for them, the tabloids often take these honest admissions of friction and twist them into something ugly. Every time Rachael mentions a fight or their need for space, the gossip magazines print stories about an impending divorce. They take their authenticity and weaponize it to sell papers. In an industry where most celebrities pretend everything is perfect, Rachael and John are willing to be messy. This honesty is actually their greatest strength because they have nothing to hide. They know that their marriage is a work in progress, and they are okay with the world seeing the cracks. But marital spats are nothing compared to the literal and metaphorical fires this couple has had to walk through together. Fires, muggings, and loss. On a quiet night in August 2020, a literal fire outbreak occurred in Rachael Ray's home that changed everything in their lives. In her Lake Luzerne home, a chimney fire quickly grew out of control, eventually burning the entire house down. Rachael and John were forced to flee with nothing more than the clothes on their backs. They stood in their pajamas and watched 40 years of memories, such as family photos and her first cookbooks, turn into a pile of ash. The celebrity chef took to her social media and shared, "On August 9th, my house burned. 15 years of memories, 40 years of notebooks, drawings, thoughts, and my life's work. It took about 1 hour for this house to come down, and in my mind, it took decades before it was even built. It was not a minor accident. It was a devastating loss that would have caused many to retreat from the public eye. But for Rachael Ray, she was back on camera within days, broadcasting from her guest house to keep her show running. This decision showed her incredible strength, yet it also highlighted a habit of never allowing herself time to process pain. The ability to survive such a disaster was forged decades earlier in a dark hallway in Queens. In 1997, Rachael was beaten and mugged in her own apartment building. This man attacked her twice in the same year, leaving her physically bruised and emotionally shaken. This terrifying experience is what created her tough-as-nails New Yorker exterior. She learned early on that the world can be a dangerous place, and the only way to get through it is to be tougher than your circumstances. This resilience became her brand, although it often meant hiding her true feelings from the audience. The emotional hits continued during that same year of the fire when their beloved pit bull, Isabu, passed away. For Rachael and John, Isabu was a fur child who had been by their side for 15 years. The loss of a pet is a unique kind of grief that hits deep in the soul. Because they chose not to have children, their dogs are the center of their home life. Watching a pet grow old and pass away while your house is also burning down is a weight that few can imagine. It was during this period that fans first began to notice a shift in her energy. The relentless spark that had defined her for so long was beginning to flicker under the pressure of so much loss. Rachael's life motto is centered on making something out of nothing. She takes the gibberish of a situation and tries to build a new recipe or a new home from the remains. This philosophy was put to the test again in 2023, when her daily talk show ended after 17 successful seasons. For nearly 2 decades, her identity was tied to that platform. Losing that daily connection with millions of viewers created a professional identity crisis. She was no longer the queen of daytime TV, and she had to figure out who she was without the studio lights. The physical and mental health concerns that fans pointed out in 2024 and 2025 might be the result of this cumulative weight. Years of surviving muggings, fires, and professional shifts eventually take a toll on the nervous system. Resilience is a powerful tool. Nonetheless, every person has a limit where the body demands a rest. What seemed to be a medical diagnosis to some could have been the reality of a woman who had been carrying the world on her shoulders for too long. With so much history behind them, you may still be wondering, where do Rachael and John actually stand today, in the spring of 2026? Rachael Ray in 2026, the current status report. In February 2026, Rachael Ray appeared on stage at the South Beach Wine and Food Festival, and the energy she brought was unmatched. She looked vibrant and healthy as she hosted her famous Burger Bash for the 20th year in a row. Fans who had been worried by social media clips saw a woman who was very much in sync with her husband. John was right there by her side, helping with the drinks and the crowd. This appearance is proof that while the format of her life has changed, her passion for people and food has not faded. She laughed off the rumors with a characteristic New York attitude, proving that she is still the same person who built an empire from a grocery store demo. Her professional world is also undergoing a massive transformation through a project called Free Food Studios. This is her new venture into an unfiltered media empire that moves away from the old rules of corporate television. Rachael decided she no longer wanted to live by committee or follow the strict demands of network executives, and by partnering with A&E, she has regained control over her content, producing over 100 new episodes of her favorite shows. It allows her to speak directly to her fans without any corporate filters. She is focusing on the type of cooking she loves most, which is hands in pans and completely authentic. This shift is a bold move that shows she is prioritizing her creative freedom over a traditional daily platform. When it comes to her physical health, the recent updates are encouraging. The slurred speech that once caused concern has vanished in her newer appearances. Many people now realize that she was likely adapting her filming style or dealing with the temporary weight of extreme stress. Her silhouette has changed as well, appearing leaner and more vertical in 2026. She attributes this to a consistent routine of lifting weights at 4 in the morning and sticking to a Mediterranean lifestyle. The rumors of a tragic diagnosis can finally be put to rest. There is no divorce filing, no secret illness, and certainly no goodbye from John. They are moving forward as a united team, ignoring the digital noise that often tries to pull them apart. Some reports claim that Rachael has become secluded, but the truth is that she has chosen a quieter life on her own terms. She spends much of her time between her rebuilt home in upstate New York and her villa in Italy. This is not about hiding from the world. It is a conscious choice to escape the rat race and focus on what matters. Her podcast, titled "I Will Sleep When I Am Dead," has become her primary tool for controlling her own narrative. On this show, she has raw and unscripted conversations with friends and legends, showing a side of herself that a daytime talk show could never capture. Through the internet's chaos, it remains clear that Rachael Ray is not going anywhere without a fight, and she is not doing it alone. The Italian Renaissance. To understand why Rachael Ray seems so different in 2026, let's look across the Atlantic to the hills of Tuscany. For years, she talked about her dream of living a simpler life in Italy, and she finally made it a reality at her villa, Bella Contea. This villa is a working estate where she and John have spent months at a time.
3 years ago, my husband and I came to look at a piece of land that had 2 stables, no plumbing, no electricity, but the land itself was so beautiful.
Far away from the prying eyes of the American paparazzi, the move to Italy was a massive risk for a woman whose entire brand was built on the fast-paced energy of New York City. Critics wondered if she was retiring or if she was simply hiding from her health struggles. But the truth is much more interesting because she was actually undergoing a personal renaissance. In Italy, the rules of her life are completely different. She spends her mornings walking through olive groves and her afternoons testing recipes with ingredients grown on her own land. This environment has allowed her to heal in a way that the concrete jungle of Manhattan never could. The slower pace of European life is what finally helped her nervous system reset after 20 years of daily television. This shift allowed her to focus on the manual labor she loves, like gardening and restoration, which keeps her physically strong without the stress of a ticking clock. By choosing a quiet life over constant fame, Rachael Ray has created a new blueprint for what it looks like to age with grace. If you followed Rachael's journey from the beginning, let us know your favorite memory of her in the comments below. Make sure to like this video, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more content like this, tap on the next video on your screen.